This is the eufyMake E1, a machine that can print durable, full-color images onto, well, almost anything. From plastic, to wood, to metal, to whatever this is. And in this full review, I'm going to be putting the eufyMake E1 to the test to see if this machine is worthy of the $47 million worth of Kickstarter backers who helped bring it to life. Let's get started. How's it going, guys? Angus here from Maker's Muse, and this is a first on the channel. Not a 3D printer, but a regular printer. Except the eufyMake E1 isn't anything like your office inkjet. Oh no. This machine uses UV-cured inks to build up complex full-color images from layers of CMYK, white, and gloss inks. And these images have a real thickness and texture to them. It's not a 3D printer as such, but it is capable of producing images with up to 5mm of depth information by repeatedly stacking layer upon layer of ink. And there are actually many similarities to this machine compared to resin 3D printing technologies you may be already familiar with. This kind of technology isn't new by any means. These flatbed digital printers or flatbed UV printers have been around for around 20 years or so, and they are used in industry extensively to produce images on packaging, advertisements, t-shirts for print on demand. However, as you might guess, these industrial UV printers are huge, cost a fortune, and for a long time they were locked down by patents from key industry players, just like how 3D printers were. But similarly to that, this is rapidly changing and opening the door for new companies to take on UV printing tech, and that's exactly what eufyMake has done. We'll start with first impressions. This machine is very professionally presented, and it is heavy and quite a bit larger than you might expect. Despite being a baby in the UV printer world, the core unit still weighs 20 kilograms and comes heavily protected in a double box for shipping, which is just as well because it looks like someone dropped mine at some stage during delivery. As with all my reviews, everything in this video is my own thoughts and experiences, good and bad, and eufyMake has had no control over the content. They provided the machine free of charge, and I take my time to review it, and they get to see this final video at the same time you do. If you're interested in the E1, then you've probably already seen countless videos on how easy setup is. And honestly, yeah, it is. The quick start guide helps you get everything connected, and then you download their app. You do need the app to run this machine, you have to make an account, and then you follow the instructions to get everything set up and running. But there are a few things worth noting. Most importantly, this machine must remain powered on at all times when you're using it, for reasons I'll cover in a bit. So make sure it has its own dedicated power point that can't be accidentally switched off or tripped. It does only sip power with a small power supply, so it shouldn't be too much of a drain, but it's imperative that the machine is not just switched off randomly or you will damage it. Attaching the ink cartridges is an area you need to pay close attention to because, again, this isn't some dodgy brothers product. There are rules to resin jetting. The ink must be treated with the utmost respect. Just look at those warnings. If you've ever had experience with resin 3D printing, then you're already familiar with the dangers of uncured UV resin, but I suspect many people buying this machine will not have that experience. So please, read these warnings carefully and fully. You cannot touch uncured resin, and you absolutely cannot ever dispose of it down the sink because uncured resin is horrifically toxic to marine life, hence the cute little warning on each cartridge. Thankfully, with this machine, exposure to uncured resin is very unlikely because it's completely self-contained. You press the cartridges down into place, making sure they click in properly. It can take a bit more force than expected. And then you need to attach the cleaning cartridge, which handles waste from the cleaning cycles, ink purges, and general machine maintenance. And with that done, you wait. Initial setup takes quite some time. The ink needs to fill the lines, and the machine will do various calibrations before finally asking to print out a test to verify everything is working correctly. And in my case, it was not. Cyan was barely printing, which quite frankly terrified me because once cured, UV resin goes rock hard, so if it does cure in the system or in the nozzles, that's really bad. Thankfully, eufyMake has prepared for this, and the app asks you which cartridge was playing up before then initiating a cleaning cycle on that cartridge to try again. If you can't reuse the initial test paper, you need to substitute it with some copy paper, and in this next test, everything worked great. However, do be warned, if you stick paper down onto the brand new sticky plate, then it will ruin most of the stick instantly. So how do you use it? Well, you can use the app to print simple things, but to use the machine properly, you'll want to use this, eufyMake Studio. Here, you can create your own artwork, control the printer, and send prints to it wirelessly. And it's a very slick interface with tons of useful controls for manipulating existing designs or creating your very own. Like the big 3D printing brands these days, eufyMake has turned the homepage into a collection of user-generated designs, which you can then select to print on your very own machine. I suppose it's handy if you have no imagination or ideas of your own, but honestly, it's a heck of a lot of AI slop and didn't interest me in the slightest. So for my testing, I chose a range of kitty photos, and I purchased this amazing cyberpunk decal pack by Creative Flux, which lets me pick and choose what elements I like to then compose into a final design using Affinity Designer. And yes, I did purchase this, and yes, it has commercial rights. Link in the description below. So without further ado, let's take a look at all the things I've printed on materials ranging from ceramic to carbon fiber, titanium, and other things. So let's take a look at the printed results of the eufyMake E1. In short, these are stunning. I tested a huge range of materials and almost all of them worked flawlessly. So I started things off with the ceramic fridge magnet that comes with the printer. And of course, I couldn't help myself. I had to put photos of my kitty cats on it. And it was really easy to do in the software. Basically, you put the fridge magnet on the print bed, then you let it calibrate and take a photo of that magnet, and it will trace a contour. So it'll auto-detect where the actual shape is, and it'll figure out a bounding box that you can then drag an image into, and then you can scale and manipulate it how you like to make the finished product. Now, because this machine is CMYK plus white and plus gloss, you can choose the order of those inks, or you can even choose to not use the white or the gloss, for example, if you want a different look image. So with the magnet, I did just the standard white underbase, CMYK, and then a gloss finish, and it looks absolutely stunning. It's so super cute. The colors are rich, and I just can't believe the resolution looks this good off a printer that's printing UV resin. And of course, I couldn't stop there with the kitty photos. I had to do one big one. eufyMake sent across the wall art kit, and this is what I printed of prints. For this one, I did a gloss as well, but I think it would have actually looked better flat. But either way, it has incredible detail. Now, I wasn't very careful with this. I did actually tape the edges down, which I didn't actually think I needed to do. The plate's quite heavy. And of course, in my haste, I just put this down on the print bed without putting the sticky surface down first. And yeah, don't do that, because when this UV resin cures and hardens, it goes rock hard. And I had to spend a long time with a scraper blade to remove that hardened overspill resin from around the plate. So make sure you put down that sacrificial sticky layer first, that sticker, before you do any prints. This adorable chicken mascot design was designed by our in-house designer, Lady Muse, and it's printed on the wood canvas kit. And I decided to test out the depth relief feature of the E1 with this print. So this print actually has depth to it. It's assigned each color a different depth, different thickness, and it takes a lot longer to print these images with this texture. Significantly longer, and uses a lot more ink than the flat 2D images, which do have a little bit of texture, but nothing like this. You can actually get some ridiculous, up to 5mm thick reliefs out of the eufyMake E1. But yeah, do be aware it will use a lot more ink and take a lot longer. This was about an hour, 50 minutes to print this, and it has a depth of about 2 or 2.5mm or so. Those are the standard materials, but what about non-standard materials? Well, I had to know how 3D printed materials would work, so I tried PLA, PETG, and TPU. And because for these reviews, I don't just like making prints for no reason, I decided to actually try a practical project. So I made this cover for an Arduino Uno, and I modified one of the decal packs in that Cyberpunk decal pack I got in Affinity Designer, and made it fit the bolt holes of a Arduino. And so I tried it out in these 3 different 3D print materials. For all 3 plastics, the resulting image is stuck down really, really well. But what I'm noticing is the texture of that surface makes a huge difference to the image quality. So with the PLA, it's got that textured PEI powder bed surface, and it's pretty rough. It loses a lot of the image's sheen and sort of clarity, but it's still not bad. It's still pretty good. But for the PETG, that first layer was actually pretty terrible, and as a result, the image itself is pretty terrible. Now, PHG is quite a bit more slippery than PLA, but for both of them, I can't get the image to come off at all. It's really, really stuck on there. But what surprised me the most is TPU. I fully expected this to flex off when you bend it. Now, eufyMake do have a flexible white ink, which is designed for flexible surfaces like leather and t-shirts, fabrics, and that sort of thing. But I haven't got that in my kit right now, so I just decided to try with this standard white rigid ink. But even with that, this current print, this TPU, is really quite durable and flexible. I cannot get this ink to come off this print, and that absolutely blows my mind. I didn't even think that would be possible. For testing clear acrylic, I wanted to try the inverted image trick where you print the ink layers in reverse, and that means that the image is actually printed on the back of the clear plastic, and you can see it through it, which provides a huge amount of protection. So the image is actually printed CMYK first, and then it's printed with the white backing to give the colors more pop. And when you look at it from the front, it's actually protected by that clear acrylic, so you can't scratch it off if you try. You're just going to scratch the plastic. It's incredibly durable, and the colors look really good. Now, I've even seen people online print this sort of thing, but they don't print a white backing layer, so it gives an almost stained glass effect. And I managed to achieve a little bit of that effect with some polycarbonate printing I did, which, again, I fully expected the print not to stick to. Polycarbonate is a more flexible, tougher clear plastic compared to acrylic. It's used a lot in combat robots, so for this part, it's actually a combat robot top plate. And I printed this detail on with just black and color, no white backing, and again, I can't get this off. It is stuck so well. All I did to prepare these prints was to just wipe the top surface with some isopropyl alcohol or I think methylated spirits, just in a paper cloth to make sure there was no fingerprints or oils. And because there's no white backing here, the yellow is actually translucent. So if you had a light inside this clear part, it would shine up through that yellow and actually produce color. So again, this stained glass effect is really possible and easy with this sort of machine. Printing on PCBs worked a treat. So this is just a standard blank PCB used for a top plate, and I printed the violent crumble design onto it. I just aligned it using the camera, so by eye, it's a little bit off. You'd be better off with a jig if you want it to be perfect. And I tried carbon fiber as well, and this is probably the only material I've tried where the print didn't stick very well. So carbon fiber has a layer of very smooth epoxy on top of it, similar to the PCB, the FR4 material, but for some reason, this material doesn't stick the UV ink down very well. You can actually get your fingernail under it, and yeah, you can see it just comes away quite easily and just breaks off like that. So maybe you need to have some sort of surface primer, or you'd do like a micro abrasion with some sort of material to let the UV ink stick into and bite into the surface a bit better. You might have a better result. But in my case, the ink didn't stick very well to this piece of carbon fiber. I don't think I've seen anyone test the eufyMake E1 on titanium, so I also had to give that a go. It sticks fantastic to metal, and titanium is no different. This print is stuck down really, really, really well. But this technology can print on anything, right? So I tried an SSD. We live in a world where people love to customize their computers. Why not customize your SSD as well? And this is just a thin aluminium, I believe it's anodized cover. I just made sure it's clean with some methylated spirits, and the image looks so good on it. This is just one from the decal pack I bought. It's stuck down really well. You could customize these parts really easily. And these smaller prints, they take just a couple of minutes at most. And last but certainly not least, I have a friend who's really into retro things, retro gaming, retro devices, and he asked very nicely if I could try printing on a mini disc with his design, and I did, and I am blown away by the result. This is printed directly onto the mini disc. For those who are maybe too young to know what this is, it's like it was a failed middle ground between CDs and the iPod. I think they're such a cool tech. They're a tiny, compact optical disc that's protected in this floppy disk style case. People probably don't know what a floppy disk is, but believe it or not, this actually still reads. It hasn't damaged the mini disc in any way. And that's just a handful of things the machine is capable of. It really can print on almost anything. And I think this is why the eufyMake E1 has become the most funded Kickstarter of all time. I am not a fan of large established companies using Kickstarter or crowdfunding platforms to launch machines, but in this case, it was kind of the first of its class. so I can understand eufyMake wanting to feel out the market, but I don't think even they expected just how big this campaign would be, and I hope all of those backers did their homework, because now is the part of the video where I discuss all of the downsides of a machine which uses UV resin to operate. It stinks, it's toxic, the resin expires, and it's really expensive. We'll start with the smell. This is a resin system, and just like a resin 3D printer, it has a really strong acrid odor. Now, it's not as bad as some of the resin printers I've worked with in the past, but I find I'm really sensitive to the smell, and I honestly find it really nasty. I don't pretend to understand the mechanics of how UV resin polymerizes, but it off-gases during and after the printing process. And the smell is really potent. It seems to linger and can give you a headache if you're around it for too long. It's definitely releasing VOCs or volatile organic compounds during the printing process, and my air filter did record a visible increase during printing on the large bed with the sides open, but it turns out that VOCs are a bit of a catch-all category, and you can trigger my air purifier by farting on it, so I think a little bit of common sense is required here. It smells stinky and nasty, and the health impacts probably aren't great, so you'll need a solution. eufyMake do take this into consideration somewhat. The E1 is fitted with a small activated carbon filter, which gets fed air from two small laptop-style fans in the enclosure, but it doesn't seem to do all that much. You really do need to set this thing up in a large room with active airflow, or ideally set it up in some kind of enclosure with a duct to vent the stinky fumes outside. eufyMake is really clear about this in the setup documentation, but my issue is that I don't think they were clear about it at all in any of the marketing material, or honestly, in a lot of the advertisements I've seen on YouTube leading up to its release. And I feel that many people who backed this machine did so without any idea of the operating conditions required by this technology, because eufyMake is not alone in this. It is a requirement for any UV flatbed printer. Unfortunately, this seems to be backed up by the Reddit posts I've seen with people discovering the fume issue for the first time, or even trying to run the printer in their bedroom. Please don't do that. I implore you. These printed products are fully safe to handle once the resin is cured, but you should take great care to never get uncured resin on your skin or in your environment, because it really is nasty stuff. It can cause allergic reactions or even burns, because when the UV resin is curing, that's going from the liquid to solid state, the polymerizing process is exothermic, which means it generates heat, quite a lot of heat. So if you spill uncured resin on your skin and then went out into the sun with lots of UV radiation, you could get serious burns. I've seen it happen in the resin 3D printing space. Thankfully though, because of how contained and professional the system is, you're very unlikely to come into contact with the liquid from the cartridge heads themselves. But when you're swapping the cleaning cartridge, it will expose these three little nipples temporarily, so be sure to wear nitrile gloves when doing so you don't come into contact with any nasties. Honestly, there should be a few pairs included with the machine, especially at this price point, but you do get some stylish glasses to protect you from the UV light overspill, which is dangerous, but I'd say to a lesser degree. Overall, I'd say the safety of the E1 is way higher than that of many resin 3D printers I've seen, but it's still something you need to be aware of before you set this machine up. And something that many owners are now just finding out, this resin expires, and if you don't use it up, well, your machine just might use it up for you. All UV resin expires, but eufyMake has chipped their cartridges, and through cloud connectivity, they know exactly when that expiry date is. And if you pass it, they'll stop working. It doesn't matter how much ink you've used, this is a hard cutoff date to prevent any damage that possibly could be caused by running expired ink through the delicate lines and print heads. And it goes hand in hand with the plug and play nature of the machine, which makes it very intuitive and easy to use, but it will undoubtedly frustrate anyone who has resin 3D printing experience, because resin expires at vastly different rates depending on the temperature it's stored at. So the remaining ink is probably fine, but eufyMake won't let you take the risk. So be sure you use it up before the expiry date comes up. And if you don't use it up, well, your machine just might well use it up for you. This is because you can't just leave a resin system like this sitting unused for weeks or months on end. They are not like a filament-based 3D printer. You must keep using it to keep the liquid resin flowing and to stop the nozzles from clogging. If you're printing with it all the time, then great. You'll use the ink up in projects, and that in itself keeps things flowing. But the machine will enter either a deep clean state or a moisturizing mode, depending on how often you're using it. And all these processes use ink, but more importantly, will use up the cleaning cartridge. So the less you use the machine, the more of your ink you'll waste. And these inks, oh boy, are they getting up there. In US dollars, one single cartridge for the E1 will cost you $43, and you need 6, plus the cleaning cartridge, with a complete set coming in at $300 US. Each cartridge contains 100 milliliters of resin, which gives you a cost per liter of $430 US. Yikes. Most prints you do will only use a few milliliters of resin. But be aware that the white and gloss will be smashed through a lot faster than the CMYK inks, because most prints use 3 layers of white to give you a good contrast for the color, and if you want to do the funky textured 2.5D prints, then that uses a combo of white and gloss inks, and it gets really expensive really fast. But if you can find a way to handle these operating conditions and expenses, as many people will, the eufyMake E1 opens up a world of possibilities. You really can print almost any design on almost anything. And that's not just some gimmick. I've seen many products in the past that have gimmick useless features that just don't stick, but the results of this machine are actually incredible. They're pretty much flawless. And yeah, you could build a business around this capability, as I think many of the backers plan to do. But I'm just going to go out and say it. With this machine now on the market, I suspect we're going to see an explosion of AI slop slapped onto random products and flogged at farmers markets around the world. It's a little bit like the 3D printed articulated dragon epidemic we've seen at markets around the world, right? I'm all for the lowering of barriers when it comes to technology, but when everyone's doing the same thing, there's nothing differentiating you. You really do have to have that USP, that unique selling proposition. Control your designs. Find a niche that you're passionate about with superfans that will go nuts for the products that you create and products that no one else is doing. With that in mind, the eufyMake E1 becomes quite the attractive proposition indeed. A big thanks to eufyMake for sending across the E1 for review. I need to be clear again that they had zero say in what I've discussed in this video. I signed no contract and have no obligation other than to make this review and share my genuine thoughts and experiences with you here on YouTube. That takes guts from them, so a big thumbs up from me. You can learn more about the E1 in the description below, where you'll also find a link to Affinity, which is an incredibly capable graphic design suite, and it's now free to use. So, go make something. Thanks for watching, guys. Bye.